Hi, hello everyone. This is your Suraj back again with another interesting topic called Salesforce Lightning REST call. So, in this session, I'm going to show you how to do a REST call using your Lightning components. So, for this, I'm going to use the Lightning components, the controller, helper, app, and as well as like using an Apex class to do a HTTP callout. So for this, I'm going to use our free developer edition, which available free for training purpose, and you guys can also create your own dev org. So here is my free developer edition, and I'm going to use the developer console for writing this particular program. So I have already written the program, so I'll copy paste it and explain it, so it will be easy for you to understand very quickly. In case if you want the program, pause the screen and start writing the program. All right. So for this, let me create a new component. So I'm going to file new and creating a new Lightning component, and let me name it as HTTP callout example. So I'm giving my component name as HTTP callout example. This is my new component. So as I told you earlier, I have already written the program which I'll be explaining you here. So first, I'm going to create a component. In the component, I'm going to have a controller. So this is the controller where I'm going to have my REST call code. So let me create a new controller, which is nothing but an Apex class. I'm using the name as HTTP callout example. I'm using the same name. Here is my controller. So as you know, this in the controller, the Apex class programming is quite similar to your other programming languages. So there is no much change here. You can use the same classes. Okay, so here it is aura enable method where I'm gonna return a list of map. So as you all know these lines, so I'm taking the HTTP inbuilt class, creating a request, setting up the endpoint URL, which comes as a parameter here, which will be saying in other components. And here, once you do the response, I'm deserializing and getting the body, so I can put it in the map and return this map back. So let's see. I'll explain this again for you, like when we are calling and how you get this response. So this is my component. So when I go with the controller, it's going to call my HTTP callout controller, and here I'm writing two attributes. One is the response and another is the list of animals. This is the name which I've used, which stores a group of values, because in my web service call I'm going to get a list of animals, and that list I'm going to populate on the UI. So for that reason, I've taken a div component, so like the UI can look a little better. And then I'm using the lightning button. From the lightning button, on click, I'm going to do a callout controller, so which is nothing but the controller. So let me create a controller here. This is my controller. As you all know, from the component, when I say c dot, this is the standard, when I say c dot callout controller, it is going to call the controller over here. Okay, where I'm declaring a variable with the name called animals, because in another sessions I'm going to take that value as dynamic input from the UI screen. And here I'm going to say helper.getResponse, which is going to call me the helper. So let me create a helper here. So remember this step, guys. It looks little confusion for the people who are newly writing the programming, but it is very easy if you follow these steps. Okay, so here is my helper. So I repeat it again. So from my controller, from my component, when I click on the button, it's going to call the callout controller, which is nothing but my controller over here. It comes to this particular controller. From here I'm going to call the helper, okay, and it goes to the helper method, and here is the helper method name, get response. And you see here, from here I'm saying helper dot get response, and I'm passing two parameters to it. One is the variable which I have where the string value animals, the other is the component. Those two parameters comes into my helper here. Okay, and let me save this. Okay, and here once it comes, I'm gonna call the component dot get callout response content. What is this component dot? When I say component dot get, it is going to call my controller where I have a method called get callout response content. Let me go to my controller. Here is my controller, which is aura enable, and it's gonna call this method. It is gonna call this particular method, and I'm gonna set the parameters, the URL parameters, where I'm passing the URL, where I'm like adding the dynamic string which comes into an as a parameter. Okay, you might get it out why I'm taking it as parameter. Why don't I directly put the animal text over here, something like this? Okay, we can do that, but if you do like that, it's gonna hard-coded value. It's gonna become an hard-coded value. But on the upcoming sessions, I want my input to be dynamic. So sometimes I might give animals, sometimes I give some different words, some different inputs. Based on that, I want a response. So that is the reason I'm making my method as reusable component, so where I can pass the input and get the response. So once I say component dot get callout response, it is going to call my controller. Here it is expecting a URL parameter, and the URL parameter which I'm passing here. Okay, so I got some URL from Google, so like I don't know whether to use it or not, but it is giving me some responses, so I'm using the same thing for my example. So I put it here and I pass the parameter. So what happens on this action, once this method is completed, where am I? Yeah, so once this process completes, I'm going to get a map of results. Okay, because after deserializing, I'm going to get a map which I'm gonna return back, and that comes into my response. That's come into my response. So I'm saying set callback, and I'm using the response.get state. So what is the state? In the sense, it will show whether my web service is success or failure. If it is success, then I want to come inside and taking this response value. What is this response, right? So whatever web service call I did, so I'm getting this particular response. So I take that response value and putting into my variable called response. This variable where I created in the component. In the component, I created a variable called response, which is a map data type. Okay, so here I'm setting up the value. When I say component.set response, so whatever response I got, I'm going to set that value into the component response here. So once I get this, one part, that's something I've set to that variable, and let me read that value because it's a map, right? So which going to have a value called animals as a key. So I'm taking those values and putting them into a list, and then iterating to that particular list and taking that particular value. The key is nothing but like the index, whatever index you have, so you're gonna have those things. So when I say animals, so it's gonna get each and every value and put it into another list, and this particular list I'm setting it using list of animals. This is one of the variable which I created again back on my component. So this is holding a string of array values. So now in the first variable I'm holding the response, in the another variable I'm holding the list of values. Okay, and then enqueue action, as you know, you gotta use the enqueue action, so where it do an asynchronous call and it get the response. Okay, so once that response comes into my list of animals, I'm going to iterate through an aura bundle iteration. We have a component called iteration. Using that iteration, I'm printing all those values here. Okay, so I might be a little faster here because I want my session to be very short so you guys can quickly grab the subject. So I created the component now. To see the output of this, I'm going to create an app, which is nothing but an Lightning app I'm going to create. And here also I use HTTP callout example. Let's use the same name. Okay, it's already defined. Did I use it? Okay. Let me see. app. I'm using some different name. All right. And here you go with the application. So what is this? HTTP callout example. That's good. This is my app. So I'm clicking on preview to check the output. So this is my make HTTP callout button, which you see in my program. So here is my Lightning button. Once I click off that, it's going to call the callout controller. So let me click off this. See, I got different names here, different animal names I got based on the input. So how quick it is so fast. I clicked on it and immediately got the response. So you know the process, right? You know the steps. For the first, from the component, obviously the components means reusable components you're going to create. You can reuse it as many times as you want, and wherever you want you can. So on click of this, it is going to my controller. From the controller, I'm going to my helper. From the helper, I'm going to call my Apex class. Once I get that response, I'm processing it, and then I'm back on my component. I'm populating the values. Okay, hope you enjoyed this session. If you have any questions, you can put me the comments so I'll respond to your questions. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching this video.